After being diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, our next guest began to write her latest book, The Good Mother, a thought-provoking novel that covers the topic of euthanasia and unconditional love.
And joining us now is the woman behind the pages, author Sineád Moriarty. Sineád, you're very welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much.
Great to be here.
This particular book, which is on the bestseller list now, tackles a subject that, frankly, is one of the most difficult ones you could possibly imagine. Tell us about the book and what it's about.
Well, the book really is about unconditional love being pushed to the limit. It's about a separated mother of three. She has three kids. Her middle child, her only daughter, is 12, and she gets diagnosed with leukemia, a very rare and aggressive form. And as the book goes on, you realise that Jess isn't going to make it. She's terminal. And she begs her mother to allow her to die on a day of her choosing with dignity, because she's terrified of dying in the middle of the night on her own. And really, it's about, if you love someone enough, can you do that for them? Or, you know, every precious moment, obviously, with your child is going to be, you know, it's so important to you. So it's really, can she give her child what she really wants, or is she going to keep her as close to her for as long as she can? So it's every parent's nightmare, but I think it's a really interesting kind of aspect of life to look at. And you know, when we sent the book out, we sent it out with tissues, because it's actually very sad. And it's kind of a will she, could she, and would she.
What was your publishing house's reaction when you came to them with this idea for a book? Because, you know, it's fairly out there.
Yeah, well, there was deathly silence, to be honest.
Was there?
They were just kind of went, sorry, what? But I felt really strongly that I could make it work, and I believe I have. You know, I just think it's really interesting to kind of push yourself with each book and explore new topics, and sometimes talk about things that maybe people don't necessarily talk about.
Well, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, because your cache of work has been so varied, yet when you arrive at this book, book number 12, Sineád, obviously you're exploring darker avenues. It's something that you actually have experience with, in the sense of it's brought you to write this particular piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think this book is definitely sadder than my previous books. As you mentioned earlier, I was diagnosed completely out of the blue with rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune condition. And I had took more drugs than Ozzy Osbourne and had none of the fun last year. I spent a lot of time in and out of hospital and stuff. But I finally got the balance right, so I'm feeling really good now at the moment. But yeah, I mean, I definitely, you know, it was a frightening time, really frightening time last year. And I think in a way, they often say, you know, when some things happen in your life, particularly not very pleasant things, they make you more creative. And I think my book is actually very strong, because perhaps I went a bit deeper.
Did that spark something in you to write something about that? And I mean, obviously, when you're looking at cancer, and you're talking about people who are terminal, obviously, you know, there's many people in the world who have experienced that with either a parent or a child. So when you're throwing something so incredibly, how does one put it? It's a difficult, traumatic kind of experience, that you are landing them with euthanasia, which is very controversial.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, obviously it's fiction, but I just think, you know, and I'm not giving a judgment on either way. For me, I'm just telling a story, and really it's for the reader to decide if they think she made the right decision or the wrong decision. Whatever that is, you have to read the book to find out. But I just think that it's really, I'm just putting it out there, and it's really for the reader to decide.
What's the reaction been like to the book?
It's actually been phenomenal, and people are really affected by it, you know. And I mean, while it sounds very, very tragic, it is heartbreaking, but it's also heartwarming. I mean, it's a book about love, you know, so it is very heartwarming as well.
You've layered it with other characters as well, who help to kind of, I'm sure, add some sense of relief or alternative to the very meaty and deep core subject material.
Well, absolutely. I think we in Ireland are fantastic at sort of, you know, matching light and dark. You know, we always find humour in the darkest places, and you know, certainly for me, my sense of humour has got me through some tricky times. So I think it's very important to marry the two, you know, and I think we're very good at it here.
Absolutely. And I think when you're going through something as traumatic as that, I mean, I know in my darkest times when my mother had terminal cancer, you have to I mean, it is what it is. You have to take it and kind of run with it, and there is humorous moments within those dark times too. But I also wanted to speak to you about Maeve Binchy, because she is one of my favourite novelists, and I know you had an amazing experience with her, and you have a little piece of her always in your kitchen. Tell me about that.
It's actually just in front of my desk on a corkboard. So when I sort of first started out, I did an interview, and I mentioned the fact that I admired her hugely, and I thought she was just managed her success with such grace, and she never changed, and she stayed true to herself. And then out of the blue, I got this beautiful note, handwritten, just saying thank you so much for your lovely words. And oh, it's one of my most treasured possessions. Yeah. So I have it there in front of the desk. So every time I look at her, I kind of think, okay.
She was such a wonderfully warm character of a woman, wasn't she? And generous as well, to a fault. And the inspiration for this particular story, you were ill. You were, I suppose, things were going through a difficult time, but the actual subject matter for it, was there a light bulb moment? Did you suddenly kind of think, that's a good idea? And where, if you did, where did that come from?
Yeah, well, interestingly, and there's a lot of talk about euthanasia in the papers, I suppose. I mean, the idea probably came to me sort of a year and a half ago now at this point. And I remember thinking, and it was a lot of it was about sort of older people and elderly parents and that kind of thing. And I just thought, God, what would happen if I flipped it on its head? What would happen if it was your child, you know? And sometimes when you think of something that frightens you, you think, well, actually, maybe this is a good subject to, you know, maybe this is something, I've got something here. And so I just went, I mean, I was nervous about it, but I just went for it.
And how did you actually explore it? I know that Stephen King, in his book on writing, he talks about his method of writing has been like archaeology, where he kind of just brushes away and the story reveals itself. Other people come at it from a different way. They have the story fully formed and they just want to get from A to B. Yeah. What's your approach?
Research. I did a huge amount of research. I did a huge amount of research into AML, which is a type of leukemia that she has, and I read stories about people who survived and people who didn't survive, written by their families. And then I read a lot of medical journals. Yeah. I spoke to a lot of doctors and oncologists. And so I do a lot of research before I start, because that gives me the confidence then to write about a subject matter, you know, because I think you have to be very responsible, you know, when you're writing about difficult subjects.
Very quick final question. Was it upsetting to write?
Really upsetting. Oh, God, yeah. Sometimes I had to actually walk away from my desk and take a moment.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've got 3 young children, so sometimes I could barely look at them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it was. But I think that translates to the page, and hopefully that kind of the passion and that translates.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Interesting headspace to be in.
Oh, it's a fascinating. I mean, difficult,
very
but fascinating.
We'll be talking about it later.
It's called The Good Mother. Sineád Moriarty, thanks a million for that.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck with this book and future ones as well.